From a sheer kind of colorway, design, cell shading perspective, nothing to do with the knife, just with how it appears and feels in hand, this has knocked it out of the park. What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I am Brian and I'm here today with another knife unboxing review. And this knife is probably the most icy hot knife that I have ever laid eyes on. I knew when I saw this knife that I had to get my hands on it, and I am hoping that the reality of what this knife is lives up to what I hope it can be just based on the pictures of it. This is a Heretic Wraith V4 in a cotton candy cell shade. Let's get this box open and see what we are working with. All right, so we have a Wraith V4 manual clip point cotton candy cell shading. Heretic knives. I know nothing about Heretic. I have seen some of their knives on Blade Binge before, but never purchased one. Thought they were always pretty interesting in their designs, but this one in particular, ooh, that's neat. Very, very cool box. This one in particular just kind of spoke to me because of the cell shading. You know that I love interesting things on this channel. Caution, this is not a toy, and as knives go, this is up there with being very interesting, very icy hot, very over the top to me. And in hand, it does, from an initial impressions, live up to what I was hoping for. It feels very solid. Let's get this blade open. Interesting that the blade is not as smooth, just kind of manually operating it as some of the other knives I've got. Lockup, pretty uneventful. It looks absolutely gorgeous. My honest intent with this was to make this my true everyday carry knife, because being the icy hot stunt is, I love just taking eccentric ideas and designs and working them into my everyday life such that people that see me think that I'm quite frankly crazy. This is up there. I mean, this is absolutely fantastic with how it looks. From a sheer kind of colorway, design, cell shading perspective, nothing to do with the knife, just with how it appears and feels in hand, this has knocked it out of the park. So for what I wanted it for, it's already definitely checked that box. Let's kind of get into the more knifey aspects of this though. This is interesting. So from a deployment perspective, I guess you flick this lever. Interesting. So they do have an auto version of this. I have to go with the manual because I live in California. The lock button honestly leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of its operation. You know, they talk about lock stick with a button. It's not really lock stick per se, but you can kind of feel it. Nothing about this is like very smooth. But the price point on these comes in quite a bit less than kind of what I'm comparing it to, which would be something like this Demco 8022 that costs $700 and is just manufactured to perfection. So this came in at a $413 price point. And while I think that some of that kind of shows up, I mean, like, this is just, it is not smooth at all. And it is the type of thing that I noticed just because I've got a lot of more expensive knives, but it's probably not something that would have bothered me had I just purchased this knife at this price point and been done. And everything else that I would care about in terms of the feel and the quality and the strength kind of in hand, you know, no blade play side to side or up and down, really solid feeling aluminum scales, nice jimping up top. From a handling perspective, from a look and feel perspective, this gets top ranks. It's just in the kind of motion open and close that it leaves a little bit to be desired versus some more expensive offerings. Let's get into some of the details of this. The weight, I'd be interested. Aluminum scales, Magna Cut blade. We are at 4.6 ounces, which is pretty solid compared to a Demco 8022 at 5.4, so 0.8 ounces lighter. It does feel light enough to work as an everyday carry knife. Let's compare it to my other kind of everyday carry, Demco Nano Shark. 3.7 ounces, so we are 1.1 ounces heavier than that. No, 0.9 ounces heavier than that with this, but we get quite a bit more length than the Nano Shark, with the Nano being 5 7/8 inches overall with a 2 1/4 inch blade, versus this Heretic, which comes in at probably about 9 2/3 inches long with about a 3 and we'll call it 7/16 edge on the blade, and maybe a 3 2/3 inch blade itself. Handle would be 4 7/8 of an inch. Really nice size, I think, for everyday carry. It's got really nice length to both the blade and the handle, but it also feels pretty narrow. So we're probably at about a 1/2 inch thick, not counting the handle itself. Weight is reasonable. I think this could definitely work very well for everyday carry. My only concern would actually probably be around the texture that you've got in the scales here. I think it looks fantastic, but it is very, very grippy, and I have a feeling, you know, putting it in and out of your pocket or sharing it with keys or other things that you care about might not work as well as knives that have smooth scales like this, that I think would be more forgiving to kind of get in and out of the pocket easily and also not beat other items up. This has a date and serial number stamping on the clip. Very nice clip. You know, they did not skimp out on the clip, and it does appear to be ambidextrous, so I think you could take this screw out and swap the clip to the other side, which does work nice for me because I am left-handed. It does say Wraith 03 2026 USA, serial number 071. I do not know how many of these they made, but the more I look at this up close, the more I'm just blown away by this cell shading. I love the different colors in play. I am a girl dad, and so this is kind of right up my alley. My daughter has said from a very young age, I need the knife to cut the kiwi.
I need the knife to cut the kiwi.
You need a knife to cut the kiwi. And I've kind of leaned into that in terms of my knife collection here. I really just like it. I mean, every detail, look at that. Look at the jimping on the bottom here, and it's got lines across all of it. I think that they said the cell shading is done by hand, If so, it is just mad impressive. I like that it's like very three-dimensional. All the fine edges, they all have shading done. It's not just, you know, shading on the side and that's it. They really covered everything. They made this a very complete offering. I'm very, very impressed with this. What else is there to know about this? I'm not so sure. The pivot bolt looking kind of like a car rim, I think is kind of interesting. It does feel like it's a classic Heretic knife signature. I don't know if there is a theme or basis for it, but again, I really like the cell shading that was done here. The lock button, again, not the greatest feeling thing. Functional. Kind of cool that, you know, the knife does drop into place, very nice. Detent wise, pretty good in terms of, you know, wanting to stay down. Again, the problem with it, if it's a problem, is just it's a very rough motion from kind of there to there. That's probably my only complaint. The smoothness of the action and the smoothness of the lock button. Huge, huge cutout. You'd call it a thumb hole normally, but this is much larger than a thumb hole. It's a little bit of an awkward shape in terms of wanting to reverse flick deploy it, you know, finding the exact best spot. Kind of feels best about right there. That didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. There we go. As with every knife, it takes a while to kind of play around with it and get used to it, but pretty satisfying once you get used to it. All right, so just another quick observation. Obviously, you know, with this kind of fin here, this knife is really designed to be deployed this way, and it works pretty well that way. So getting your finger in this large groove is a little bit awkward because of this hump there, but if you just do that, I'd say it works fine, but obviously I'm not getting kind of enough force a couple of the times that I tried it. Also interesting to see is the way this locking mechanism works. So part of the reason there's this extra friction when you open it is there's this kind of groove. It's going to be a little bit hard to show on camera here, but once it gets to this point, there's this extra groove that pin kind of goes through in the blade, and it creates a little bit more friction. So that's why it's a little bit tough through that portion there. As you get it open, you'll see when it hits kind of full lock, the locking pin will pop out. Or in, I should say, and keep that blade in place. So that little bit there is what holds it open. And then if you push it, you see it falls back, and now the blade can release. Overall, I like it. $413 price point, aluminum scales, my first aluminum scale knife. MagnaCut blade, looks fantastic. I think this is gonna work really well, and it's gonna be a great talking piece as well. I think when other people see this, they're gonna go, oh wow, what is that? That's a knife? That's why they had to include the caution, this is not a toy, on the bag. Let's just compare this size-wise to a couple other things that I've got, see what we think. We've got the Demco Shark Attack. Pretty close overall in terms of the profile. Narrower handle, slightly more length. Demco Sax, a little bit shorter. Strider SMF. Very similar length, obviously quite a bit bulkier in the handle there. little bit bulkier overall. I think they did a really fantastic job with this. I think just across the board for the price point, with the cell shading and the overall design and shape of this, it's a solid offering. Could it be better? It absolutely could be better. It also could be more expensive. So pretty happy with this as a purchase. I think the last thing I'll do before I sign off is get this in a dark room and shine some UV light on it, just to see what it looks like with the UV cell shading being lit up. Wow. So that is pretty darn cool. But I think that's all I've got for this one. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of this knife or Heretic knives in general in the comments. I appreciate you, and I will see you at the next one soon.